Well, Theresa May is in China, I think, trying to show that it's business as usual. The problem for her is that splits, infighting in the cabinet, but also lower down the party too, they've sort of become normal. And all this is with a backdrop of concern from some in the Conservative Party about her leadership, not just on Brexit, but on the domestic agenda too. And I think if the Brexit deal goes sour, if the Conservatives get a bad set of results in the local elections, which are coming up in May, or if there's some sort of failure of command in Downing Street, then I think any of those could cause a crisis for Theresa May. So I don't think there is an imminent danger, but there is a lot of talk, and she's certainly not in a extremely secure position.
And for Labour, there's been a bit of a Brexit-related victory today.
Yes, ministers have been forced into agreeing to release some government analysis that forecasted that any outcome from Brexit would damage economic growth. The documents in question had been leaked to BuzzFeed, and Labour had been pushing for the government to release them. They had threatened to use a parliamentary procedure to force the government to hand them over. In the end, I suspect, seeing that they wouldn't have the numbers to defeat Labour, the government confirmed it would be handing the documents over to a Commons Select Committee. But the government has all along stressed that this work was just in a draft format. It was unfinished. There were lots of caveats in it. And they have said some aspects of it are negotiation sensitive and should not be put into the public domain. We did get a response from the Prime Minister on all this. She dismissed the significance of these leaked studies, and she said the findings were very preliminary and didn't address the prospect of the government's preferred option of a bespoke deal. But I think it shows once again the difficult position Theresa May and her government are in without a majority.
Eleanor Garnier, thanks very much. So, with Theresa May in China, is this the perfect moment for rebellious Conservative MPs to consider their leadership options? And can Labour seize the chance to capitalise on today's Brexit victory? Well, Chris Philp is a Conservative MP who's also Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Communities Secretary, Sajid Javid, and Barry Gardiner is Labour's Shadow International Trade Secretary, and they both join me now. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chris Philp, but is the government agreeing to allow some MPs to read those leaked Brexit reports after suggesting that they really didn't matter, a sign of caving in, effectively?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, the government's always been very happy to allow Parliament a full role in scrutinising each stage of Brexit and letting Hilary Benn as chairman.
Wasn't too keen on people seeing these documents, though, was it, even after they've been leaked?
Well, look, I mean, we have no problem with parliamentarians scrutinising these documents confidentially. Clearly, there are some elements which are sensitive given the negotiations, and one wouldn't want those in the public domain, although some have leaked already. So the government has no problem letting Hilary Benn and MPs in a private reading room look at these documents. But we shouldn't overplay the importance of these documents. As you said a moment ago, these documents don't analyse the government's objective, which is a bespoke free trade deal.
Indeed.
And single market access with the European Union. That scenario is not analysed. And let's also not forget, we've seen analyses like these before. Before the referendum, the Treasury published analysis of what would happen, and that analysis turned out to be completely wrong.
And it's not from the Treasury. Barry Gardiner, it was pressure from Labour that brought about this government deciding to say these documents can be seen by some MPs. But Brexit isn't always Labour's strongest card. Can you capitalise on this?
Ritula, there's a new joke going around Brussels. It's that the mafia make you an offer that you can't refuse, and the British government make you an offer that you can't understand. And the sad fact of this is that we are in a situation where there is no progress on any clarity with Europe about what it is that the British government want. And the reason for that is that Theresa May has lost control of her cabinet. Her cabinet cannot decide amongst themselves. And we have the ludicrous situation where a minister of the Crown comes before Parliament yesterday, Steve Baker, and says it is absolutely imperative that these documents be not released. It would be a disaster for Britain if they were. And 24 hours later, the government says, oh, all right then, we'll let you see them.
Chris,
Hang on a sec. So the issue that Steve Baker was alluding to was public disclosure, and they aren't going to be disclosed publicly. They're going to be made privately available to MPs. And what Barry Gardiner was saying a second ago was a little bit rich. He said there's been no progress and no clarity. Well, look, just before Christmas, we saw progress when the European Union agreed with us. We're going to move on to the next stage of the talks. We got all of those early issues like the payments and free movement agreed. So there's been huge progress.
Okay.
And if you look on the Labour side, they can't even agree whether or not we're going to be in the customs union or the single market after the transition period. Whereas we have complete clarity on that. We're leaving both.
I want to come back to that specific point. But Chris Philp, on the question of what Steve Baker said yesterday, you also had one of your own ministers, the Justice Minister, Philip Lee, tweeting about this, saying, well, the next phase of Brexit has to be all about the evidence. We can't just dismiss this and move on. That's one of your own side.
Well, look, of course we'll always look at the evidence, but we have seen these reports before having predictions that have been totally incorrect. The Treasury, the government itself, published an analysis in May 2016, just before the referendum, predicting an immediate recession following an exit vote, and that didn't happen. They also predicted job losses. In fact, we put on 500,000
worrying about
extra jobs.
What's in these reports, because they suggest there's three separate reports, three separate scenarios in which economic growth is predicted to go down. You've got one of your own side worrying about the findings.
Well, first of all, of course, one will always think about these reports carefully. Let's keep them in proportion. It's saying that in 15 years' time, in the very worst case scenario, annual growth might be on average 0.5% lower than it would otherwise be. So one might grow at 2.5% rather than 3%. That's in the worst case, and none of those scenarios analysed are the scenario that we're going for.
So you're going to park those concerns. Barry Gardiner, the point that Chris Philp makes is a very justified, is a very real one. What is Labour's position on where it stands with our future relationship with the EU? Is it the customs union, a customs union?
Look, the point is this, and Chris has just admitted the same, that these impact assessments, these economic assessments of Britain's future, do not include what the government is aiming for.
But what does Labour suggest in opposition?
No, Ritula, hang on.
If you could just answer that specific question.
I'm very happy to answer that question, but let me simply make the point. It is the government that should be commissioning impact assessments about what its end point is.
Indeed.
It doesn't know
Barry,
what its end point is, and
it's
therefore
also for Labour to oppose.
It hasn't actually commissioned the research and the economic assessments that should have been done and should have been made available to Parliament.
But if I can point out to you that your colleagues Heidi Alexander and Alison McGovern have also urged Jeremy Corbyn to get off the fence and have backed calls for Britain to stay in the European single market and the customs union after Brexit. Look, what is Labour's position? Can Labour bring some clarity?
Of course, you keep on asking what Labour's position is in the media, and we keep on reiterating what it is, but you don't like it, so you don't.
What is it, Barry? Tell us what it is.
And what it is very simple. We said we recognise the benefits that accrue to the UK, the economic benefits that accrue to the UK from being part of the single market, and that have been accruing through the UK from being part of a customs union. Now,
is the position to
so what does
stay
that
in both
mean?
of
In or
those?
out, Barry? In or out?
Sorry,
afterwards,
Chris,
after
I didn't interrupt you, and I don't expect you to interrupt me, but I'm very happy to answer Ritula's question. And the question is about whether it's staying part of the customs union. The fact of the matter, if you understand that the customs union, the EU customs union, is an instrument of the treaties of the European Union. We will no longer be a member of the European Union, and therefore we are not subject to the treaties, and we cannot be part of the customs union as it stands today. That doesn't mean...
You could be then part of a customs union that's reformulated under a new treaty, but it's the same, essentially the same.
And that is precisely what I was just about to say to you. We can be part of a customs union with the European Union in the future on the same membership terms as the EU is. What we can't do is be part of a customs union agreement like Turkey is currently. Okay. And that is absolutely clear. And incidentally, it would also answer the key question which Chris failed to answer about the phase one of the negotiations, which is how you solve the Northern Ireland-Irish border.
That's a whole another issue for another day. Barry Gardiner, Chris Philp, we must leave it there. Thank you both very much.